there was no passion in the wine. It was just a representation of it was just a regional wine. And then, so Jacques pulled his grapes from the co-op in 1989. And I happened to meet him when I was in London and traveled over, and he started producing his own old vine because he had such old vines. Old vines give more intensity to the grapes, because you can imagine an older vine throws off less fruit, and each one of those berries is that much more intense. So he had all this great old fruit because he's a fifth generation winemaker, and started doing his own Domaine Schistes bottlings. And now 25, well, yeah, 30 years later almost, he's one of the preeminent producers in this Côte de Roussillon. This is a Côte Catalan, as it says on that, which is more of an encompassing region. So some of these grapes come from outside his Côte de Roussillon area, and that's kind of semantic. So that's not as big a deal to learn about. But just so for you to know, Côte Catalan is more of a regional wine, but this is still estate bottled from his own grapes. So that's so yeah. So a lot of the producers in Languedoc-Roussillon, as Chris had mentioned, have pulled their fruit and making their own estate bottled wines. And now you'll find wines from Languedoc-Roussillon that are now pricey. I mean, it used to be there is still a lot of great value, but you have some top-notch Languedoc-Roussillon wines that are retailing for 30 to 40 to $50 a bottle. Some of the top ones.
All right. Last week we talked with a rep from Gerard Bertrand, and some of his top end stuff, 50, 60, 75.
Yeah.
That's not even the ceiling with those. I mean, they go up from there, and that's in every category. Excellent. Mark, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
So, as Mark mentioned, this is an IGP, so it comes from more of a regional thing from Côte Catalan. And that's a good segue into what Mary's going to showcase to us now, which is very specific as to where it comes from. So it adheres to stricter laws within that region of Bandol. Mary, what are you bringing us tonight? And this is what I'm sipping tonight.
There we go. Can you hear me? Yeah, so we got the Bandol. So I'm going totally to the east of where we were before, the south of France still, but totally, yeah, different side of the country. And I'd say Bandol is, I almost compare it to Sancerre with Sauvignon Blanc. In a way, it's a bit of the queen of the Provence wines in a way. So yeah, as Chris just said, there's a lot of rules and regulations around. They have to manually harvest. Particularly these guys have no herbicides or pesticides or anything like that. And they also can't technically sell or they can't sell their wine before March 1st of every year. Okay. That's how strict the appellation is overall. But it's a very light wine, very delicate. So I call it a queen almost. Grapefruity for sure, but it's ultimately, I think it's an easy wine for, it could be a happy hour wine, but it could also be your more fishy, more charcuterie based, or going kind of in the same lines as the Languedoc, even though this one has no Grenache and is more of a Cinsault, more veg mix. And so that's what's bringing you something much lighter. I think even it's in the color and in the taste.
No, really, even on the nose. I mean, you're comparing it to Sancerre, even on the nose, not that it got that little like grapefruit pith nose on it. Mm-hmm. But and to make mention, this is a 2018. So as I mentioned before, don't turn your eyes on, don't overlook 2018 rosés. Again, it totally, you gotta know the producers. You have to put your trust in, who's selling it to you. But any of the three that we're talking with tonight, any of the three salespeople we're talking tonight, I mean, if they bring me 2018 rosés, it's because they're backing them and saying these are fantastic. You should really consider trying these. And when Mary picked out hers today, she goes, "This is a 2018." So I said, I don't have any problem with a Bandol 2018.
Yeah, sorry, because specifically Bandols should be. You can keep them for 3 years, maybe 4 years, but overall, you're supposed to drink them a year after. They're going to tend to be a little bit better than the previous year or the year it comes out. And I know mostly Côte de Provence or even the IGPs would say the opposite. We'd say when they're nice and fresh and, when they come out that year.
Right. So this is within the Provence region, but this is its own sub-region with separate laws.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have exactly their own ways and they're very strict to it. And then particularly this winery is, I love it truly because actually I think she might be almost the same age as the last winemaker you just tasted. But it's really mother and daughter. They do have the boys working in the back, but it's actually the two girls leading everything. So I think it also shows in its style a little bit that it's more feminine in its ways. And just the whole wine, they're very small. They're, I think, only 15 hectares or so. But the whole community is very solidarity between each other because they even had a neighbor one year with 0 yield, 0 grapes. And they actually went ahead and made kind of a mix they all pitched in their own grapes in order for him to be able to make money that year and do something. So it's a really, really big community with a big heart, which also helps a lot.
But it still has really nice body. It's just not ultra light. There's some viscosity on the mid palate.
Yeah.
And the finish is just long, really long. Got nice white pepper on the back end.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, a lot of pepper. Yeah.
But beautiful body again. What's the breakdown again on this?
I don't remember the percentages per se, but it sounds so mauvais for sure.
Right. And that's Bandol's all about mauvais.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're a big grape.
Crop. So if you're talking red, it's Mourvedre, right?
Yep.
For the most part. Yeah. And its counterpart would be Cassis, where it's mostly whites, yes?
Yeah.
Yeah. So. Good. What does everybody think about this? You chime in. Now, what would you have with this? What's your quintessential pairing with this?
I'm more of a charcuterie eater, so that's my personal choice. But that whole region is a massive fish region. That's pretty much almost all they eat. So I would definitely go with that. And also, they even produce olive oil on their own. So yeah, even if you had some nice olives on the side or anything, that's great. Because I heard that was part of the cheese board.
Yeah. Question from Kate. On the bottle, it says manually harvest. What's the advantage of this?
Well, I won't say it's always an advantage for the winemaker because even last year, I actually helped them with the harvesting. It's a lot more fun, I'll say that. Yeah. But it's a little hectic because they can't always find the people to do it now in France, which used to be much easier to do. But as far as manual versus machine, the quality overall is just going to be, they're going to be able to kind of really handpick and take out either stems or anything much more precisely than with a machine.
A little more selective.
Yeah.
But usually the price should go up once you start manually harvesting anything, especially I would think for Bandol. Again, as you're associating Bandol with like Saint-Cyr, it's a more expensive piece of property, yes? So
absolutely.
I would think factoring that into, especially with manual harvesting and everything else, I would expect the price point to go up. Not the case with yours, though. I mean, yours is, I don't want to say inexpensive, but considering Bandol pricing, it's one of the best values out in the market right now for Bandol.
Yeah, it's a mix also. As I said, well, I've known her for a very, very long time, so I think that helps.
Right. I think for everybody here, especially everybody, the three of you guys do direct importing. So that cuts down a lot of the, well, if I could say BS on here, I'll keep it PG-13. But it keeps a lot of that out. And to find these smaller producers and bring them in and to keep it at the price points where all these wines are at is just phenomenal. I think phenomenal. As everybody's getting into tasting these, Zach's saying delicious. But exactly, they're all delicious. And especially when the three come to our store and they're showing us and you say, wow, this is really good, but what's the price? Again, when you're seeing something Bandol on the label, like, oh, here we go. And they throw the price out, I'm like, oh my God, that's fantastic. Yeah, bring that in. That's great value, and people need to see this. Put this in more people's hands. Excellent. Mary, thank you very much. I appreciate that. was excellent. Andy, you're up, my man.
All right, so I'm going to switch us over from France. We're going to jump over to Portugal for our last rosé.
It's kind of ironic. Like all three wines, they're all coastal cities, coastal towns. So I got to imagine seafood's going to go with every one of these wines, especially yours.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, like a ceviche or, you know, a little bit more of a salty fish is going to pair really well with this Fiuza wine. It is a bit more fruit driven than the other two wines, although I haven't tasted them. I have a good sense of their profile. Next time we do a round table, I'm going to make sure to grab my compadre's bottles and one of your cheese boards so I could, you know, participate along with everybody else here.
I had a salad, so I'm not even eating cheese. So
now you're having salad over there. This would pair very well.
I'm trying to keep off the quarantine 15. I'm trying to take it off.
I think that's all of us. So
Yeah.
you know, it's not just you. So jump over Fiuza Rosé. This is from the Tejo region of Portugal. They are a family owned and estate grown fruit winery. And this is similar to sort of Languedoc, where from about the 1930s until the 70s, all of Portuguese wine was really done under a cooperative style. Everything was done in bulk. Everything was just made for consumption and not for quality until about the 1970s, when everyone, you know, sort of saw a change in their form of government. And then Portugal joined the EU in 1985. And that's really when the revolution in winemaking happened. So really came, you know, much more focus on smaller quality production of wines. And that's when Fiuza started, 1985. They hired a winemaker, Peter Bright, who is Australian, came in to sort of modernize their winery. And these guys were pioneers in French wine varietals. So not only do you see Cabernet Sauvignon here in a Portuguese rosé, along with a classic grape varietal of the Touriga Nacional, but their winery today, actually their top selling wine in Portugal is Sauvignon Blanc. So when they started planting these grapes, it really made a lot of the Portuguese natives heads turn and wonder, what are these guys thinking? And really what they were thinking is of the future. And so they make a lot of fun wines. We carry, I'd say, probably about 10 different bottles from them. But the rosé is, you know, probably our #1 seller. And just something fun and different. You know, you go into your wine shop and it's, you know, probably 95% French rosés. So it's nice to, you know, have a little bit of diversity in the crowd.
Yes, it is. But
So,
year after year, this has been killer. It's a great little rosé, and the whole project, everything they make, is just super value oriented and just over delivers. I mean, take a side note: in this month's Wine of the Month bag, we're doing one of their red blends, and it's another one. It's just wow, you know.
yeah, the Babu is that's a great wine. You know, a good everyday red. It's like you said, value driven. It's not something that's gonna, you know, blow you away, but it's going to be a great bring to a dinner party, pair with a nice, you know, with a nice steak or something like that. And, you know, just in that affordable price point, those everyday price points.
Right. So, Touriga Nacional, I mean, that just grows like a weed all over Portugal, no?
Yes, it's all over. And really it was, very popular in port wine production. Port wine in more recent history is kind of taken a little dip. And a lot of the wineries are using it into, you know, more table wines. One of the wines I do like from them is 100% Touriga Nacional, because most wines you see from Portugal, red wines anyway, are blends. So it's really nice to try that wine, identify with the grape varietal.
Right.
But here in rosé, it's a fun wine. So this wine, definitely more fruit driven than the other wines. More strawberry up front, raspberry, cherry skins, little touch of that white grapefruit. And And because they're, you know, sort of bigger red grape varietals, it almost has a little bit of tannin you could feel sort of on your cheeks and on the side of your tongues. So that actually helps it pair a bit better with some richer food. But I would say this is definitely more of a fruit-driven wine where, you know, from Provence Rosé, you'll get more of an herbaceous quality, maybe a little bit more mineral. This, I think that's why, you know, like a nice citrus salad or maybe, you know, a lighter meat dish, like even like a grilled quail or something like that, you know, so something a little bit more Portuguese in fashion would really, really pair up well with this wine.
So Mark's asking, is there any Tinto Roriz in this? Or
there is not. No, just 50% Cabernet Sauvignon, 50% Touriga Nacional.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But even with this,
that's Tempranillo, right, Andy? The Tempranillo is the Tinto Roriz.
Yeah, that would be, yeah. And I find that, you know, I don't know how well versed a lot of people here are on Spanish wines. I feel like that is the biggest barrier to Portuguese wines. Many of you are probably very familiar with the grape varietals from Spain, but you just don't know it in the Portuguese dialect. So sometimes you do a little bit of research and you'll be surprised. You know, you pick up a bottle, it might be intimidating from Portugal. You know, you might not be able to pronounce the grape varietal, and then you look it up and you realize, you know, this is something you might have had, you know, 10, 20, 100.
And I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's one of the biggest obstacles with people trying to get people to gravitate towards Portuguese wines. Again, they grab them because they're affordable. And again, like we keep saying that they over-deliver, but it's, what are these grapes? You know, you're not seeing, I mean, again, you're seeing Cabernet on this, but you're not seeing Merlot. You know, you're not seeing the common grapes that, you know, and it's that are in everybody's vernacular. But that was the problem 12, 15 years ago with most of Europe. People didn't understand what the grapes were, especially Spain, you know, France, Italy. But as labeling and marketing got better and people understood, you know, they started to put the breakdowns of what was in there, you know, people started to grab, because now it's familiar. Instead of just calling it by its appellation, now they can flip the bottle around the back and say, oh, all right, Grenache, Syrah, Mourvèdre, okay, I understand that. But even still with Portugal, again, like you said, you know, people don't understand Tinto Roriz, which is Tempranillo, Touriga Nacional. You go through the whole slew of them of indigenous grapes out there, and you're like, what are these? What are these grapes? And you brought up a good point to try Touriga Nacional on its own. That way you can identify what that grape's all about. I mean, everybody's had Cabernet. Most people have had Cabernet, Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc. But then
one of my favorite things from this producer, although we don't import it because it would be very hard to sell here in the U.S., but they do single bottlings of pretty much every white varietal that you would find in a Vinho Verde. So, you know, Vinho Verde is a wine that almost everyone has tried. Very inexpensive, affordable white wine, and generally, you know, a blend of 6 or 7 different white grape varietals.
Right.
But to get one and understand really what the grapes are adding or contributing to that wine is, you know, is a hard thing. And you know, everyone has their own chemistry to sort of making that wine. So to sort of taste through all of those and kind of have a better understanding of what goes into the bottle is a lot of fun.
Right. Even the thought of Vinho Verde, people think, you know, cheap, little fizzy, but there are some producers out there that are really tinkering with it and going back to the old world style of Vinho Verde, where it doesn't get so super fizzy. It's almost still, and it's almost comparable to like a Petit Chablis. It's got good solidity to it, nice body to it. Again, totally different, but I mean, if you had to make a little comparison to it, and you're seeing people do that, winemakers do that. But Fiuza also makes Alvarinho, which is the Portuguese version of Alvarinho from Spain, and it is out of this world. I mean, since you first introduced us to it, we've been running with it since, and people always ask, how is this? How, you know, is it really that good? I'm like, I've had Alvarinho from Spain, $20, $30 that were excellent, but Fiuza at, you know, we're selling it, you know, under 15. I said, this thing's spectacular. It's a powerhouse. It's a great summer wine. It's a great food wine. I almost think
a lot of the Alvarinhos from Portugal are better than the Spanish ones.
No, they can be, right.
And I agree with Mark as to they're a bit more user friendly, you know, a lot more tropical fruit tones, a bit easier to approach, not necessarily need to food pair with them.
Right.
Where you get, you know, those big sort of briny, you know, from the Ria Spicious that, you know, you kind of need a big seafood dish to go along with.
Right. I love this wine with some barbecue. It's got that little bit of fruit to it, especially if you get some really tangy, spicy barbecue. It tones it right down. I just love that combo coming into summertime, especially 4th of July weekend. If you're grilling some chicken, pork, anything, you know, you're slathering it with something spicy, thick, and, you know, peppery. Throw some of this on it. Watch how the two interact. So you're thinking something spicy, thinking something sweet, the two contrast, and how they, once it gets into your mouth, how it blends and really, you know, pairs up fantastic. Wow. Yeah,
excited to fire up the grill this weekend.
This weekend, they
4th of July,
fired up
perfect,
all summer. I got a ton of fish to put on the grill this weekend. I'm excited about, but to just pour rosé all weekend, I'm just, you know, with this kind of weather, this is refreshing too. I think all three of them tonight have been refreshing. Again, describe it how you will, but the bottom line, they're just refreshing. They got nice acidity. They're not overbearing. Especially with the Bandol, especially with the Catalon, they're not over acidic. Like some of these can go way over the top. These are all terrifically balanced. And again, time and a place for every style of rosé that we tried tonight, depending on what you're serving, depending on your mood, really, what you're in the mood for. But Fiuza is definitely a force out there, driving home for value in Portugal. And they do some you said they do some higher end stuff too, no?
Yes, they do. We carry their Fiuza Premium. That's 100% Touriga Nacional, and was like a top 100 wine in Wine Enthusiast a few years back. Which that's another, you know, it's actually, no, it's not Touriga Nacional. It's 100% Alicante Boucher, which is a really fun sort of clone that came out of southern France. Very inky. It's an actual grape varietal that, when crushed, its juice is actually pigmented. So it's a lush, fruity wine. Something that you could also maybe, you know, put a nice slight chill on it, make it like a summer red. The version that we have is, you know, kind of in a lot of new oak, so it's pretty powerful. But other, you know, bottlings of Alicante Boucher could, you know, enjoy with a slight chill summer.
No, big time. No, absolutely.
That's one of those Tinturier grapes, right, Andy? Tinturi, they call it, where the juice is red. There's
exactly.
There's very few of those. There's very few of those grapes.
Tanat's one of them.
Yeah, it's kind of like a weird clone that someone invented in southern France, and I think there's actually two different clones that are out in you know, in wineland in France and in Portugal. But I think it works very well with Portuguese wines. Some of these, Touriga Nacional is a very small grape, high in tannin, and I think the Alicante Boucher sort of just adds to it and gives it, you know, a nice lush, you know, bit more fruit and body.
Well, keep in mind, Touriga Nacional, that's the main grape of port. That's what gives port their longevity. That the main, when they make it that style, when they make it of the, you know, use it for that.
Right. Even when you're talking about port, I mean, they're just big blends of grapes. And, you know, whether people know that or not, you know, when you're drinking a port wine, it's a big amalgamation of a lot of different grapes that go into that.
But Touriga's the one that gives it the backbone, with the length that you can put a vintage port down for like 40 years. And there's a few other grapes, and Tinto Roriz being one of the other main ones, but Touriga is always like that one that gives the backbone of the port.
Yeah, I lay down ports for my son from 2003, which was a great vintage. But
that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like when people
you can forget about that for a while.
What's that?
You can forget about that for a while.
I plan on it. Just leave it in there. Forget about it. I got Sauternes from the same year, 2003. Just forget about them. They're stored away. I'm not gonna look at them, and hopefully he's not getting married anytime soon or having kids at 16. So. We'll be able.
I was gonna say, when's his 21st birthday? I'll clear my.
That'd be a great night. Great night. We'll pop one of those things open that night. But even with Portugal, and Mary could, you know, you might want to dip into this because you deal with some Bordeaux producers. One of my customers, and he's been in the business longer than I have, so I really respect what, you know, the information he brings to the table. He's retired, so he's got the time, you know, to look up this stuff. But in Bordeaux, they're starting to integrate Portuguese varietals to their blends, not into the bigger houses, but some of the Bordeaux Superior. Are you starting to see them with some of your producers, Mary?
I haven't, but overall, I was going to say just in France in general, I've been hearing a lot more winemakers almost doing exchange programs. I mean, obviously not this year, but in general, whether it's in forums or chats or anything, and even, you know, Portugal, but even for California, I'm just hearing a lot more winemakers actually being open to sharing their techniques and receiving new techniques. So that doesn't surprise me at all for Bordeaux. Yeah. And Bordeaux as a whole has all of its best qualities, but is always looking to kind of, you know, do something new as well. So out of all the regions, that makes sense.
Even from a gentleman I talked to in Fairfield that we're friendly with, he was saying, especially like Pomerol and the right bank Bordeaux, the problem is with climate change and everything, some of the grapes aren't ripening or they're over ripening, too much alcohol. So the whole thing is they're trying to keep it traditional, where these wines don't morph into something else that, you know, they're saying, wow, this is too hot. The alcohol is getting too high in the Merlot. How do we tame these things? And I followed up and read it somewhere. Bordeaux is allowing at least 3 Portuguese varietals into the blend. Again, it's all experimenting to see if they can keep that traditional profile going without anything getting way out of whack. Again, as climate change starts taking effect, you know, you're seeing yields start to dwindle. Just styles really transforming into something else. And I tasted with a gentleman that really knows the region, and he sat back and he's laughing. He goes, I know the producer. He's like, I know this region. He goes, you know, 10 years ago, if we drank this, it'd be a much different animal. But right now, he goes, if I sold this to somebody, he's like, they would say, what is wrong with you? What's wrong with this wine? He's like, that's the problem. What's the alcohol? I said, it's almost 14%. He's like, well, there you go. That's not where it should be. He's like, but that's what's happening out there right now. He's like, and it's a problem. That's why Portugal's stepping in the varietals that they're starting to plant out there to really keep it more traditional as to what they're been used to. So it's not morphing into something else. And you see that in a lot of, I'm not going to say a lot of vineyards, but all across Europe, where they try to make their style more international. And I hear my friend does wines from Rioja, and he even says there's a lot of kickback where Rioja say, no, we want to go back to traditional form instead of making this big, you know, widely accepted wine. And have you seen that as well in some of your appellations that you deal with?
Yeah, well, at least I know for Bordeaux, that was definitely the case. And Bordeaux got to a point too where some guys overplanted, if you will. But then, like any other wines in France or everything in France, there are so many laws for you to be able to do that and for you to be able to remove them. And so all of that, Bordeaux as a whole is changing entirely because of it. It almost exploded too fast, or it boomed too fast in its own way, and everyone kind of rushed a little bit back, you know, 90s or 2000s. But yeah, and now they're almost having an identity crisis, I think, in some ways. I don't know what you guys think, but that's how I see it. I wouldn't say teenager because they're much older, but it's almost like a midlife crisis or something.
Yeah. Andy, you see a lot of your producers your portfolio is primarily Italian, but you carry a lot
from all over. And I would say, you know, I would see the same thing coming from some of our, you know, quality areas in Spain where, you know, they feel almost like the larger production areas are watering down their name brand. So I've seen like our, from Bodegas Balbis, they're, you know, family winery since 1777. And they're trying to move away from the word crianza because they feel like so many other places in Spain is just labeling everything crianza, and it's taking away from the value of more of the quality production zones. So they're, you know, have moved to like selection, especially on their front special selection, you know, and then just keeping the crianza on the quality label on the back of the bottle from the Dio. But yeah, I mean, you know, as different economies around the world struggle and people look to get wine into different markets, I think people are willing to manipulate the wine to you know, be pleasing to the masses.
Yeah.
You know.
And I did a side by side with Chateauneuf years ago in the store, and the one well-known brand, it scores high every year. I mean, you can't knock what they do. They've been doing it for years. But you tasted that next to something that was relatively unknown, and you're like, wow, what's going on here? I mean, it was like night and day. I said, well, that's somebody trying to, you know, make something for a more, you know, worldly market. I said, you know, they're getting away more from what traditional is, and, you know, they're making something that's, you know, point driven instead of, you know, heritage driven, you know, and that's sad to see. But in the case, you know, you want to make sales, you want to get that out there to a broad audience. What do? You know, it may not be the style everybody wants, but, you know, what are you going to do? You got all this wine sitting there. It's got to go somewhere, right?
That's why we all try doing what we're doing, Chris.
Oh, right. That's the reason, you know, especially why I love all three of you guys. And, you know, there's other reps like you. It's you find these smaller producers and they're still traditional. Nothing's more heart-wrenching and heartbreaking than, you know, I always use the example, you know, there's this really great Pinot producer out of Willamette Valley in Oregon that they make phenomenal Pinot, phenomenal. They came into the store 2 years ago into the market, and they had these two second labels, and one was a Pinot, one was a Pinot Gris, and you tried them and you looked at them cross-eyed. You're like, what is this? They're like, well, what do you mean? It's Pinot Noir. I said, but this tastes like a California Pinot. They said, yeah, that's what we're going after. So why would you? I said, that's you're right. Yeah, I mean, you're Oregon.
Just move your vineyard to California then.
Right. I mean,
what are you
like
paying
Burgundy,
that real estate for?
Right. If you like somebody in Burgundy saying, no, I want something that tastes like Maomi. Why? You have your own style. It'd be like Frank Pepe saying, you know what? I really want to go after like a Domino style pizza. Are you crazy? That'd be sacrilegious one, but you know, it's just it's heartbreaking when you see that. It's like, why? Why would you have to do that? You know, you have your own style, you have your own flavor profile, you have your own fan base. It's you know, stick to what you do, play the classics. You know, if you ever saw the movie Chef, you know, Dustin Hoffman says to Favreau, you know, when he's going out to create the meal for the night, Favreau wants to do his big, you know, eccentric menu, and Hoffman comes in and says, just stick to your classics. You know, if you went to go see the Stones and they didn't play Satisfaction, wouldn't you be upset? He goes, stick to your classics. And, you know, it's a story from there. But excellent.
After that low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, right. Excellent. Well, anybody, questions out there? Could unmute yourself at this point. I want to thank all three of our participants tonight. Give them a round of applause right now, if you can. If I could unmute everybody. Let's see.
Thank you guys. Thanks, Chris, for hosting, man.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. It's nice to get back to basics with all this COVID. I think I could speak for my compadres here. We really miss doing our tastings and getting out there and presenting our wines. And, you know, it's been a difficult road, although people are drinking, but, you know, getting out there and explaining what's in the bottle and getting those new things out there has been a bit of a challenge. So it's nice that everyone took the time to join us tonight.
That's the whole thing. We're trying to keep everything as normal as we can. And by doing these, especially when you're all sitting at home, it's fun. You know, we're all at home and we're not, you know, we're just homebodies too. Everyone looks at us in the wine world and says, oh, you get to go out there, sell wine, drink wine. Yeah, but we're just like you all. You know, it's just we drink a lot more wine than you all, I think. I think I could say that about all of us. I think, you know, but in a good way, you know. And when people come to us and ask us, well, I want to learn more about it. It's just drink more wine. It's really get out there and taste more wine and understand what you're tasting and come back to us with questions. And that's the fun part for us, especially talking with these three tonight, you know, when we're, you know, individually, when we're sitting and tasting with each other, to bounce different things off each other. What are you tasting? This and that. That was the whole idea for these roundtable tastings with everybody. it's fun to see everybody else's product and how it tastes and everything else. But there's essentially four different opinions here as we're going around the room here tasting these wines. And you learn a lot from that. Again, you can hear me talk verbatim at every class, but to hear from everybody's different experiences, I think that's so much more educational with that.
And nobody has to drive anywhere. We can all sit.
Nobody has to drive anywhere. I know. I feel bad about Uber, but this is more fun.
We're not drinking a lot. We're perfecting our practice.
Yeah.
I appreciate seeing everyone drinking without a mask, to be honestly.
Oh, really true. I went out for dinner Saturday night. We took a drive up to Newport just to get out of Connecticut for the night. Nothing wrong with Connecticut, but just to get away from everything. And that was my first night out for dinner, and it was the restaurant we went to was very nice. I mean, everybody was masked, social distancing and everything, but it was just different, as you get up to, use a restroom or just get up to, you want to stretch your legs, mask on. I mean, you know what? It's for everybody's benefit. And even there was a table of 6 next to us with a little baby, and, each person got up to go outside, and, they took the baby out with them, mask on, mask off. You make it work. It's weird, but you know what? You make it work. And hopefully we're going to get to a point where, it's not going to be like this anymore. So before closing up tonight, let me start off at the top. Mark, favorite restaurant in Connecticut that you go to? I call this out every time. Not to,
Well, I mean,
one's better than the other, but, your favorite place, it could be anything. It could be, just a dive way home.
I love our boy August. Guy, what he's doing there, because he's just doing things without a kitchen, really, and doing things like his own creations on that. And that's just, to me, such an intimate, great place to try wines and food, but it's not like this complicated. But it's 4-star, but it's not complicated. So
right.
I love what he's doing, no doubt.
Yeah, it always amazes me if you get a chance to look behind the bar and how he makes everything. It's just it's mind blowing, and with such creativity.
Yeah, totally.
It's really good. I mean, be amazed what you can do with a panini grill and a hot plate.
Yeah, totally.
Just go from there, and I think they crush it there. They're just wonderful people, and they just do a great job. So, Mary, what's your favorite?
I'd say Stowe's, actually, in West Haven, which
Haven,
has nothing to do with wine, but yeah. I really like my fried clams, so I've been getting fixed as much as I can.
Yeah, my mother lives right by there. They just had a big thing at their house. I didn't go, but same thing. Let's get some fried clams, whole belly clams, and that it could be that simple. There's, especially, I think we're spoiled up here in the Northeast. I can only say that because when my grandparents moved to Florida, to go out to dinner with them to get fried seafood, it was a nightmare because they compared everything to West Haven fried seafood. And when you're talking old Italians, you take them out of the New Haven area, you transplant them in like Florida, it was nothing but criticism left and right, and it was embarrassing to a point. But you gotta love them for what they, you gotta love the old school. But yeah, no, Stowe's is great. Awesome. What? Are they BYO? They're not BYOB, are they?
I don't know, actually, because I never really stopped there or anything, but it's not even about the wine, it's just the food in general. Because I live in New York, so most of the time, even for this quarantine, my grandmother's in West Haven, so that's how I got to know it. But definitely a Zupardi's and a Stowe's run was done multiple times. So.
Yeah, that's a good run. That's how I packed on the 15.
Exactly.
Runs like that. Every time you go home, it's like, oh, let me stop here. Oh, I want to go to this joint. Just have grab a quick pizza or a quick thing of fried clams. Awesome. Andy, how about you? Now, you live up north, up in Chester, correct?
I'm up in Prospect, so once again, I'm on the other side, like the Portuguese wine. So, but my favorite restaurant, I'll go. Kind of back to my roots too, up in Waterbury, La Tabla, which is in Town Plot, and it's sort of more contemporary Italian food, a great old Italian neighborhood. Yeah. You have D'Amelio's right there if you're looking for something that's a little bit more traditional. But La Tavola is, an amazing experience. They have a beautiful patio, and they've been packing it as much as they can, weather provided.
Right. Is that the one with the glass floor tile? You could look into.
Yeah, exactly. That looks down to the wine cellar. Yeah.
So a friend of mine years ago, we went there for New Year's Eve dinner, and he insisted you have to get the lasagna. I'm like, well, I can make lasagna. I'm not going to an Italian restaurant to try their lasagna and critique it. I said, try something else. He's like, no, you gotta get it. I mean, he gave me a piece of his. I'm like, this is really good lasagna. I mean, but again, it's contemporary. It's not just slathered in sauce and mozzarella. It's really good.
And it's just like Mom. You'll eat that lasagna for the next 2 weeks. So
it's even better. A week later, it's even better that way. Awesome. Thank you very much. All three of you, thank you again. This has been great. Again, to expose people to these different wines from these smaller producers, and they should find a home in everybody's glass instead of the big.
And thanks for everybody for participating.
Yeah,
thanks
no. All you out there, thank you all for coming. We appreciate it. So to all of you out there, I raise a glass to you all. To my three reps here tonight. Cheers to you guys. Thanks for helping out with this. So one last thing to say, our buddy Carol's home tonight. I don't know if she's watching, but she goes for surgery tomorrow. So we want to wish her all the best. Speedy recovery, get back to work. But no, she needs the time to get rest and everything. So I wish her the best. All right, buddy. Cheers. That's for you. She's not drinking tonight. She better not be drinking. 5:30 surgery tomorrow. She better not be drinking. But cheers to you all. Have a great 4th of July weekend. And,
you too, man. And give our best to Carol, yeah.
I will. We'll do so. Take care, everybody. Have a good night.
Thanks, you guys.
Take care, guys.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.